Seahawks fans, wherever you may be, welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Seahawks fans, welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers. And a couple of weeks ago, Keith, we did an NFC look around the league as far as ranking the top NFC teams. And we thought we'd come back and a little bit different this time. We're going to look at the Seahawks AFC opponents in this year's schedule. Welcome in.
Yeah, it not only are we looking at the schedule, but it's not a nice schedule. When you look at the AFC
make and break, I was going to say this is a make and break kind of a schedule if we really break this down, because we talked about the NFC West possibly the chance to go 5-1 in that in our division, but this is really where you kind of make the playoffs or you don't.
Yeah, so they're gonna do well in the division. We know that they're gonna do well against some of the NFC teams that they're gonna play, just based on who's on their schedule. But the AFC teams that are on the schedule are the ones that you really look at and wonder, that's going to be the test right there, because this is a tough group of teams that. Yeah.
I would argue too that the NFC. North, AFC North, which is the division that we're playing this year, is really crowded. I mean, it's probably the best division in football, top to bottom, this season, and then plus the second place team out of the AFC South, the Titans is on the schedule. So we'll go through them. Mm-hmm. The first game out of this schedule. In the AFC is against the Cincinnati Bengals on Sunday, October 15th. And the Cincinnati Bengals are a good team. I mean, last year they went 12-4.
They're a powerhouse.
And well coached, good underrated defense, great offense, great position skilled groups. And they have a number of different ways they can kill you on their offensive side of the ball. This is one of those games, Keith, to me, looks like it could be a high-scoring affair.
Agreed. This is one of those where it's going to, we'll see how Seattle's defense has progressed, because they're going to have to slow down that offense, and that's a really tall task.
Yeah. I mean, Jamar Chase, wide receiver, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. You've got backups. They drafted the kid Andrea Lasavas, underrated kind of guy, and Charlie Jones as well. And then they've got, obviously quarterbacked by Joe Burrow. They've got Joe Mixon. They drafted Chase Brown. They've got Travion Williams. Their tight end groups is Irv Smith and Drew Sample. Decent run blocking now. That used to be their weakness. They've upgraded that over the last couple seasons. Their defense is, like I said, underrated. And they're looking to get into the Super Bowl out of the AFC, which is ultra competitive and very good at the top, with the Bills and Kansas City. And I think Cincinnati is right there, like the third best team in the AFC.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's really what you said, the third. I mean, they're a Super Bowl contender. They really are. They're a good team. Like I said, they're a powerhouse. They were in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. They were close last year. Just a very good football team, and a very tough challenge for Seattle. Those Seahawks do get them after the bye week, so the coaches will have an extra week to put together a game plan and hopefully make something. That come up with something that will work that, Burrow and company haven't seen before.
We used to be afraid of 10 a.m. games. Pete Carroll's dispelled that from the Mike Holmgren era, and the era is prior to that. So we're a good traveling team. We're good in the mornings for the most part. It doesn't seem to impact wins or losses necessarily. What do you think about this game, Keith? Do you have an early prediction?
I don't know.
It's hard.
It's way too early for that. But this is one of the tougher games on the schedule, and they also play Philly later in the year. I mean, that's where I think it is. Like this is it may be the toughest game on the schedule when you look at it.
And that's why I look early and just say I'm probably penciling this in as a loss if I'm going to do my prediction show. As we do the 1st of September. This is even after the bye week, it's on the road, but it's currently on paper a superior team, and it's one of those things where if we're clicking on offense and we can outscore these guys, then that's the way we're going to win. I think because our defense, I don't believe it has what it takes to slow these guys down. I think we can slow them down. I just don't think we can stop them.
I don't know if anybody can stop them.
Yeah, so this could be a plus 30 points on each side game, and last man standing, last drive, could be the thing that gets whichever team over the top. Okay, second game that we're going to look at again is a formidable roster to me, especially with the quarterback in Deshaun Watson, the Cleveland Browns. Sunday, October 29th, again, a team out of the AFC North, and probably the second best team in that division. I think, and you could argue Baltimore possibly, but Cleveland to me has it to lose as far as being the second runner-up in that division to Cincinnati. And depending on how Watson plays, Keith, it really is dependent upon him. They could be in the battle there to take that division. That's how good the Cleveland Browns, I think, are this year. Some people might not view them that way, but they do have a really solid roster, and they had a great offseason.
Yeah, they do have a solid roster, and they've had a good offseason, but we've been saying this about Cleveland for a few years, and they keep underachieving, and I don't know, what's changed that's going to get them more out of the talent that they have. I get that hopefully Deshaun Watson has a good year. I mean, it'll be his first full season in 3 years. But we'll see. There's a lot of regression that can happen over that much time. And I'm not as concerned about this game, in part because it's at home. But yeah, it's a good roster. We'll see if it actually lives up to the quality that's on it. If they can,
and that's always been the case. That's always been the case. I mean, Kevin Stefanski is the head coach. Jim Schwartz is the defensive coordinator. I like Jim Schwartz as the defensive coordinator for sure. So they do have a great defense. To me, it is a matter of if their offense clicks, and they've got the tools and the weapons to do it. And at home, I think you tip in favor of Seattle. But again, this is one of those games where it could go either way for me.
So the very next week, they're on the road against Baltimore, which is a team that has improved, I think, this offseason. In part because they'll get their quarterback and hopefully get him for a full year, whereas last year they were without him for quite a while. But great defense, as we know, explosive offense. Lamar Jackson is an absolutely special player, and it was very, very difficult to stop. And it's one of those things where, we get to this point. We're right in the middle of the year, and can Seattle not let Lamar Jackson beat them by either committing everyone to stop him from running and giving up stuff over the top, or being too passive and letting him just run all over them? It's a very difficult game for them, but I don't know if Baltimore's offense, given their receivers and whatnot, can keep up with Seattle's.
Yeah, I think that, yes, that is correct. I do think that this is a transition year for Lamar Jackson coming after that injury, where I think you're going to see how good of a passer Lamar Jackson is in 2023, because they've given him some weapons there. They brought in Beckham Jr. Zay Flowers was their draft pick. I thought one of the better wide receiver options out there, undersized, but yet shifty and fast, as another weapon there. And, their defense is good. I like Patrick Queen and Raquan Smith, in the middle, pretty decent back end. So I see us winning this game. But man, are they the third best team in the division, or are they the first best team? I mean,
I think the second best team in the division.
There's a lot to prove there for Lamar Jackson. Got that big contract.
I mean, this is an MVP player.
Yeah,
he won an MVP a couple of years ago, so I don't know how much he has to prove. He just needs to go out and
after the injury is what I mean. After the injury, people questioning him. He was questioning the team, as far as negotiations were concerned this last offseason. And I think there's some stuff there that's unresolved, where I think he wants to come in and show that he's going to be that guy, that quarterback again. Now, he's had a couple of subpar seasons, and everyone has questioned his passing ability since he entered the league. And I think this will be one of those transition years for him, where he steps back athletically a little bit, doesn't try to run all the time, and completes throws instead for third down conversions. And that'll be the tell for this team. I think it goes as far as he does, which is always the case, I think, when you have a premier quarterback like that. Mm-hmm. Okay. The second place AFC South Titans are the next one on the schedule. Where does that come? I'm trying to look here.
All the way down at week 16 on the road, on Christmas Eve. Honestly, I'm not big on the Titans this year. No. Find me a wide receiver whose name someone will recognize. Oh wait, yeah. You can't. And this is a transition year. Ryan Tannehill will start the year. At some point, he'll lose his job to Will Levis, who will go through his lumps.
Well, so check this out. This is okay. So I wanted to talk to you about this specifically out of this show, which is a couple different quarterbacks that may be available by the end of training camp that didn't make a roster. One of them is Malik Willis.
Yeah.
The Tennessee Titan looks to be now their third quarterback. I can't imagine they cut Tannehill out of camp and go with Will Levis as the starter and Malik Willis as the backup.
Oh no,
anything can happen. But
what I'm hearing is that Will Levis
roster they may
Will Levis may not make it through camp. Like the team is like, okay, he's super athletic and whatever, and he was a project, but that he hasn't made any strides, and that he does not look like an NFL player.
Mm-hmm. That's always scary when you hear that out of many camps, but
yeah.
And the same thing was said last year, Malik Willis. Remember, he was going to be the everything quarterback in the draft last year. We didn't think so, but there was a lot of people that hyped him up as being a first-round prospect, et cetera, and flashed in college, but in against poor competition, and it proved out last year. What I was going to say is, if there's going to be a quarterback on that roster that's made available because he's cut, if they don't carry three quarterbacks, it would be Malik Willis. And would there be any interest to develop a quarterback like Malik Willis on the roster?
I think there would be a lot of interest to develop a quarterback. I don't know if Malik Willis, I mean, he's really young. So that's something that you could go with and see, maybe we can do what Tennessee couldn't, and that's teach him and that kind of stuff. But we'll see. The fact that the Titans are giving up on him this quickly, to me, says that something's just not there.
Was it an opportunity cost for Tennessee to draft Will Levis where they did? And so it really didn't matter if Malik Willis was on the roster. They just took advantage of a player and top player on their board.
I mean, I think it was one of those things where they were looking for a long-term answer, because they know Tannehill's not that, and they believe that Levis is a significant upgrade over Willis. So that's why they drafted him. I mean, it made a lot of sense for them to take Levis, and he's a great fit for them. And the fact that he dropped that far is kind of crazy. But yeah, I mean, he's the guy going for it. And I don't think Malik Willis has anything to do with it.
Yeah, I don't really care for their roster very much. I love Derrick Henry just along with everyone else in the league. One of my favorite backs, but he's got some wear and tear now on him. And they tried to lessen the load on him. Tyshee Spears, they drafted to kind of be their third down back, receiving out of the backfield kind of guy. Hassan Haskins is still there. And on defense, they've got Jeffrey Simmons, Keith, and that's it. I mean, really, you go up and down their roster. That's the only guy I recognize as far as a name. Very good player, a defensive tackle, but he's only one guy. So I see us handling that game pretty easily, really.
Yeah, the team that was the number one overall seed in the AFC a couple of years ago had a great defense. Great defense, great running game, and Tannehill had to do just enough. Now the defense is decimated, and their quarterback's going to have to throw them into games, and that's just not what Tannehill is capable of.
Agreed. Or Levis or Willis. I mean, they don't have any real good options. The other guy I was talking about, quarterback-wise, that may end up getting cut out of camp would be Dorian Thompson Robinson.
Yeah, out of UCLA.
Now he's on Cleveland, and he's behind Deshaun Watson and Joshua Dobbs. Now, currently on the depth chart. Now, if I was Cleveland and I saw enough out of Dorian Thompson Robinson, I would keep him over Dobbs. But Joshua Dobbs is an interesting athletic quarterback as well. If he gets cut, he'd be an interesting name to keep an eye on too. And then Kellen back into their roster as well.
Either of those guys would be an interesting addition to Seattle as a developmental project behind the Geno Locke combination.
Yeah, but not in place of Locke. At least at this point.
Not at this point.
Yeah. Okay. So Pittsburgh Steelers. That's the last team on the schedule. Sunday, December 31st. So right after that Tennessee game, and Pittsburgh's interesting. I mean, they're basically going with Kenny Pickett as quarterback.
Yep.
And
good team, no quarterback. They're the AFC San Francisco.
And Mitch Trubisky's, backing up again. But yeah, Kenny Pickett, they have expectations. Honestly, this is a roster where they expect to get into the playoffs. And I don't know how. They're the fourth team out of this division. I don't see them being any better than a 50-50 ball club, 500 club. Just based on the fact that they just don't have that quarterback, and I don't have any confidence that Kenny Pickett is the guy that's going to lead them.
When was the last time that Mike Tomlin coached a losing team?
Oh,
that's right. He hasn't.
He hasn't?
No.
So
in all of his years in Pittsburgh, they have been 500 or better in every single year.
In a couple of different coaching rankings, Pete Carroll was left off the top 10, and Tomlinson and Mike Tomlin, and both of those were ranked third overall as a coach behind Belichick and Andy Reid. And if you're going to use legacy as a method of evaluating coaches, Tomlin's got a great legacy as far as being a good coach, but he hasn't coached a good team in a long time. Now, they may not have a losing record, but they're not good teams in weakened divisions, I might add, until recently. And to leave Pete Carroll off that list, I believe completely, without homer glasses on, that Pete Carroll is the top 5 coach in the NFL. Just based,
I don't know how he could not be on that list.
Just based on redeveloping and reinventing himself over and over, and having teams, completely change roster-wise over the years, and still maintain a high level of play, and being playoff team last year, and when nobody expected that. And to leave him off that list. So anyway, I went off a little bit. Tomlin, for sure, good coach, but I think that he's probably, for me, one notch below Pete Carroll.
True. I'm just saying that he seems to always get more out of that team than is expected, because for the last few years, once Roethlisberger's decline was obvious, and then now through this quarterback transition, there's been nationally at least, there's been no expectations for Pittsburgh. Like they're the fourth best team in that division. They look like a 6-win team, and then they won 9 games and made the playoffs last year. And that is what we seem to get year in and year out from Pittsburgh. They're not elite, but man, they sure win a lot of games you'd think they wouldn't.
Yeah. Interesting. So what do you think about their defense? I mean, they got Keno Benton at defensive tackle. They still have TJ Watt, Cameron Hayward. Mm-hmm. Alex Highsmith, Joey Porter Jr. they drafted. They had a good draft. I thought Nick Herbig is the guy they drafted later on. Corey Trice, the cornerback I liked as kind of a bigger corner in the later rounds. Darnell Washington, the tight end. Interesting. I just think that this is a game you got to win if you're Seattle. Seattle's expectations are 11, 12 wins, playoffs. But first round bye, who knows, right? So the expectation level in Seattle is higher than it is in Pittsburgh. You got to go get this game. This is a situation where if you're going to get to 12 wins, you got to win this game, because there's too many other games on the roster that are toss-ups. And if you're favored at all, you got to go get this thing.
So, that Pittsburgh game, second to last game of the year. They play Arizona, which should be the easiest win ever, the following week. But you look at the games right before that, it's a stretch of like 6 weeks, so it's really rough on Seattle. Mm-hmm. And they have got to get those last 2, I think, because you're going to have a stretch of games in there where if you're 3-3 over it, I think that's pretty good.
San Francisco, Dallas, San Francisco again, Philadelphia. Ooh. That's a 4-week stretch right there where it's brutal. You could lose all of those games. Yeah. Or you could win all of them. It's going to be really tough, though, to win all those games. But if you can go 500 in those games, I think that's
and so that stretch is pretty rough. And then, you got to get out of the whatever. If that makes you look like you're in a slump, you got to get out of that against Pittsburgh, so that way you can get that win, get the win in against Arizona, and go into the playoffs. Not with momentum.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. Interesting. We're going to do our prediction show, and that stretch right there is the toughest stretch in the season, and it comes fairly late. I mean, the end of November all the way until mid-December is that's tough. That's going to be the tell, I think. Okay. Out of this schedule, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Baltimore, Tennessee, Pittsburgh, how do we do?
I'm going to say 3-2.
Yeah. So loss against Cincinnati?
Yep. And then one other one.
And loss either against Cleveland or Baltimore, and then take Tennessee, Pittsburgh.
Yep. I think we take Tennessee, Pittsburgh. We lose to Cincinnati, and then we take one of the other 2 and lose one of the other 2. We split them.
I have to say, if we win that game against Cincinnati on October 15th, this is going to be a special season, because we've got LA, Detroit, Carolina, New York. We could go 4-0 at the bye. And Cincinnati, if you win that game, you could be 5-0. And from there, you could win the next 4 or 5. And you could end up going into San Francisco game on November 23rd with 1 or 2 losses. Mm-hmm. But I'm just talking ceiling. That's the best case scenario for me. And that Cincinnati game is going to be huge at that point in the season, October 15th.
Yeah. The one thing that does change all of this discussion is injuries, right? if Joe Burrow picks up an injury and can't play in that game, Seattle better win it, right?
Trevor Simeon's behind him.
You know what I mean? So the idea that they're a better roster, so they're going to win. We don't know who shows up, right?
What if Joe Burrow is hurt and Geno Smith is hurt, and we have Trevor Simeon versus Drew Lock?
Then whichever network is showing that game is angry.
And those are, bad Denver players of the past, correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
both bad Denver starters.
Anyway, I'm hopeful for Drew Lock. I just don't want to see him get an opportunity because that means Geno's hurt. But we'll see. So I think it's time to just kind of leave this thing. Let's get out of here. A little short as far as time is concerned. It
was really long. So
yeah,
two of our last three. So.
And this AFC look, it's kind of an awkward look, but it's kind of show you do this time of the season. You take a little closer look at the particular subset of games and so forth. And so it was a fun show in that respect. But we're so far away and removed from really these things even mattering that it's a tough show to watch. So if you hung in with us, thank you. And make sure you stick around for the next shows in the series too as we ramp up and we get closer to training camp. Training camp is literally only 2 weeks away, Keith.
That is crazy.
I know. It's a fun time of the year. We don't have too far to go before we're talking about real football, which is the objective of all of this. So until then, you can find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. The show is on your favorite podcast platform anywhere. Just search for Seahawks Playbook Podcast, as well as our YouTube channel, and hit the subscribe button. Make sure you get every show in your feed every week. So until next time, go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.